Welcome back, gearheads. In the 1960s, while muscle cars grabbed headlines, some American automakers quietly built sleepers, low-key rides hiding serious power. No loud styling, no bold claims, just quiet power waiting to surprise. These are the 8 unknown American sleeper cars of the 1960s. Let's get into it. Number 8, 1963 Studebaker Lark Daytona R2. Moving on, we get to a car that truly kept things modest, almost to the point of invisibility. The 1963 Studebaker Lark Daytona R2 didn't shout for attention at all. In fact, at first glance, it looked like something your neighbor might drive to the grocery store or take on a quiet Sunday cruise. But beneath its mild, squared-off lines sat one of the era's most surprising factory setups. Studebaker, already struggling to stay relevant by the early 60s, needed something special to keep buyers interested. So they worked with Paxton to bolt a supercharger onto their 289 cubic inch V8. The result? A respectable 290 horsepower and around 303 pound-feet of torque. In the early 60s, those numbers were no joke, especially in a compact frame like the Lark. When tested, the R2 could sprint from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just about 7.3 seconds. A serious figure for a car that looked more like an economy commuter than a performance machine. But it wasn't just the raw numbers that made the Daytona R2 interesting. The fact that this was all factory-backed performance made it even more compelling. Studebaker was offering a street-legal car that could line up next to early GTOs and give them a real challenge, all while keeping a straight face. Plus, thanks to its supercharged setup, the power delivery felt smooth and consistent across the rev range, making it genuinely enjoyable to push hard. Of course, no car is perfect. The Lark Daytona R2 had its flaws, and they were mostly tied to the fate of its maker. Studebaker's financial troubles meant limited production numbers, and with only a few hundred R2s ever built, parts availability quickly became a challenge. Handling, too, wasn't its strongest suit. While the straight-line speed was impressive, the suspension setup wasn't quite ready to match the power when roads got twisty. Still, this is exactly what made the Lark Daytona R2 such a remarkable sleeper. It blended into everyday traffic, quietly carried serious performance, and left those who underestimated it second-guessing their assumptions. And as rare as the Lark R2 was, the sleepers on our list are even more unexpected. Stay tuned, things are about to get a little more deceptive. Number 7. 1967 Dodge Coronet RT440 Non-Hemi. If the Studebaker Lark Daytona R2 was a quiet surprise, the Dodge Coronet RT440 took things a step further with a more serious presence, but still managed to fly under the radar. Moving away from the compact styling of the Lark, the Coronet had the broad-shouldered look of a full-size car, yet it never really got the same spotlight as Dodge's more aggressive models like the Charger. That worked perfectly in its favor. Introduced in 1967, the Coronet RT marked Dodge's first official entry into the growing muscle car scene. But instead of loud graphics and wild bodywork, it kept things restrained. Under the hood sat the mighty 440 Magnum V8, not the headline-grabbing Hemi, but a powerhouse in its own right. This engine produced a stout 375 horsepower and a thumping 480 pound-feet of torque, giving the Coronet RT the strength to rocket from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just about 6.3 seconds. That kind of speed in a car that looked more like a family cruiser than a street predator made it a genuine sleeper. What really made the Coronet RT special was how usable its power felt. The 440 delivered low-end torque that came on early and strong, making highway pulls effortless. Paired with either a 3-speed automatic or a 4-speed manual, it could be both a relaxed daily driver and a weekend menace without drawing unwanted attention. Plus, thanks to its slightly heavier build, the ride quality was smooth and surprisingly comfortable for a performance car of its era. However, there were a few trade-offs. The weight that made it stable on the highway also dulled its agility in corners. And while the styling was clean, it leaned toward conservative, meaning it never quite got the admiration of its flashier siblings. But that's exactly what earns it a spot on this list. And speaking of cars that hid serious muscle behind modest sheet metal, the next one keeps the theme going, but with an unexpected twist from a brand you wouldn't normally think of for performance. Number 6. 1965 Buick Skylark Gran Sport. Rolling on from the Coronet, we land on something that wore an even better disguise, the 1965 Buick Skylark Gran Sport. At first glance, the Skylark looked like the sort of car that blended into company parking lots and church driveways. Practical, well-mannered, and definitely not in a hurry. But Buick had other plans. Tucked away under its plain, sheet metal was a performance secret waiting to be unleashed. In the mid-60s, Buick was more about comfort and luxury than street performance. But in response to the growing muscle car wave, they decided to take their mid-size Skylark and give it some serious muscle. The result was the Gran Sport package, which shoehorned in Buick's largest engine at the time, the 401 cubic inch nailhead V8. It pushed out an impressive 325 horsepower and a thumping 445 pound-feet of torque. Despite the hefty size, the Skylark Gran Sport could sprint from 0 to 60 miles per hour in around 6.8 seconds, making it surprisingly quick for something that looks so restrained. The charm of this car wasn't just in its numbers, though. Buick engineered it for smooth, almost effortless power delivery. You got that wave of torque early on, perfect for quick bursts of speed without breaking a sweat. Plus, it came with a tough suspension setup that handled the extra weight well, giving it better balance than you'd expect from a Buick of this era. That said, it wasn't flawless. The Gran Sport's steering felt a bit vague, and the car carried more weight than some of its leaner rivals, which dulled its cornering enthusiasm. Still, for those who valued stealthy power over flashy looks, this Buick was a hidden gem. Now, between the Studebaker's surprise supercharger, the Coronet's Brute 440, and Buick's big block Stealth, which of these sleepers has impressed you the most so far? Drop a comment and let me know, and stick around. The next car brings a whole different kind of under-the-radar performance that you won't want to miss. Number 5. 1961 Chevrolet Biscayne 409. Coming off the Buick Skylark Gran Sport, you might think things couldn't get any more unassuming, but then comes the 1961 Chevrolet Biscayne 409, a car that truly defined the sleeper spirit of the 60s. On the outside, the Biscayne was the very definition of basic transportation. No flashy trim, no racing stripes, no bold badging, and certainly no aggressive posturing. It was Chevrolet's entry-level full-size sedan, aimed squarely at budget-conscious families who needed space and reliability, not speed. Parked at the grocery store or idling at a traffic light, it looked like just another background player on America's busy streets. But here's where the magic happens. Beneath that modest sheet metal, Chevrolet had a brilliant idea. Take their freshly developed 409 cubic inch V8, a serious evolution of their previous 348, and squeeze it into the humble Biscayne. The result was a revelation. This beast of an engine produced 360 horsepower and a thunderous 409 pound-feet of torque. To put that into perspective, this meant the Biscayne 409 could blast from 0 to 60 miles per hour in roughly 6.1 seconds, which was blistering for a full-size sedan in 1961, especially one that looked like it belonged in a school parking lot or parked on Main Street, USA. What really set the Biscayne 409 apart, though, was its clever balance of power and weight. Compared to its more luxurious sibling, the Impala, the Biscayne's lighter, stripped-down build meant the engine had less bulk to push around. Add to that Chevrolet's rugged 4-speed manual transmission, and you had a factory hot rod that could embarrass many dedicated performance cars of the era. Drivers loved the direct connection they felt with the machine, the raw torque, the mechanical growl of the big V8, and the satisfaction of rowing through the gears, all without the distractions of luxury frills. Of course, being the budget model came with compromises. The interior was bare bones, with minimal creature comforts. Ride quality wasn't exactly refined, and noise insulation was virtually non-existent, meaning you heard every rumble, rattle, and roar. But for enthusiasts, that was part of the charm. The lack of polish only amplified the visceral thrill of unleashing all that hidden power. And if you thought this was the peak of stealthy street muscle, just wait. Up next is a compact underdog that AMC transformed into a genuine giant killer. You don't want to miss this. Number 4, 1969 AMC Rambler Rogue 390. Following the unsuspecting brute force of the Biscayne 409, the story takes an even more surprising twist with the 1969 AMC Rambler Rogue 390. If you thought Chevrolet had mastered the art of hiding power in plain sight, AMC quietly raised the bar. At first glance, the Rambler Rogue looked like any ordinary economy car. Plain, unassuming lines, minimal chrome trim, and absolutely no flashy badges to hint at the storm brewing under the hood. The kind of ride you'd pass on the street without giving a second glance. AMC, mostly known for building practical, budget-friendly cars, found itself wanting to make a bigger splash in the muscle car scene in the late 60s. Their answer was brilliantly simple. Take their compact Rambler body and transplant the 390 cubic inch V8 from their flagship AMX muscle car. The result? A genuine sleeper that packed 315 horsepower and a staggering 425 pound-feet of torque. All this power stuffed into a lightweight, no-frills shell meant the Rogue 390 could rocket from 0 to 60 miles per hour in a blistering 6.3 seconds, performance that would catch many by surprise at the stoplight. But the Rogue wasn't just a one-trick pony. Thanks to its smaller dimensions and relatively light weight, it handled tighter corners with more agility than its full-sized, heavier competitors. Sure, it didn't have the sophisticated suspension setups of prissier muscle cars, and yes, the ride could get a little rough when pushed hard. But in the right hands, the Rogue 390 delivered a driving experience that felt raw, mechanical, and deeply connected to the road. It was AMC's rebellious answer to Detroit's muscle car dominance. A compact brawler with a serious punch. Of course, there were trade-offs. Interior quality was Spartan, a reminder of AMC's limited budget, and refinement took a back seat to raw performance. Yet for those in the know, the Rambler Rogue 390 was a secret weapon hiding in plain sight, a true sleeper that could humble much more expensive machinery without breaking a sweat. That might have been a curveball, but from here on out, it's game changers only. You're about to hit the top 3, and trust me, these last ones will seriously mess with your idea of what a muscle car should look like. Number 3, 1968 Ford Fairlane 500/428 Cobra Jet. After the unexpected punch of the AMC Rambler Rogue, we step into territory that feels just as unassuming, yet far more ferocious beneath the surface. The 1968 Ford Fairlane 500/428 Cobra Jet. From the outside, the Fairlane 500 was about as ordinary as family sedans got. Clean lines, no flashy stripes or exaggerated scoops, and a face that was camouflaged as a grocery getter, but packed a cannon under the hood. But that's exactly what made it such a brilliant sleeper. Ford had something to prove in the late 60s, especially against the growing muscle car crowd. Their answer came quietly but forcefully with the introduction of the 428 Cobra Jet engine. Slotting this powerhouse into the Fairlane 500 turned the everyday sedan into a street warrior. We're talking about a 428 cubic inch V8 pushing out a factory-rated 335 horsepower and a mountain-moving 440 pound-feet of torque. But insiders knew the real numbers were closer to 400 horses, with some drivers clocking 0 to 60 miles per hour in just about 5.8 seconds. Numbers that caught plenty of supposed muscle cars off guard at stoplights. One of the Fairlane's biggest strengths was its ability to deliver blistering performance while keeping a low profile. No loud decals, no oversized spoilers, just raw power tucked inside a practical body. Of course, it wasn't flawless. Its suspension, while decent, wasn't built to fully handle the wild power surging from the Cobra Jet, and the cabin kept things basic with minimal frills. But that was part of the charm. It didn't need flash to prove a point. What makes the Fairlane 548 Cobra Jet especially interesting is how it played the long game. Owners could enjoy the best of both worlds, a car that handled daily chores without fuss, and then, when the moment called for it, surprised just about anyone brave enough to challenge it. And trust me, as we move closer to the final cars on this list, things are only going to get even more surprising. If you're enjoying the ride so far, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss the next hidden gem we uncover. Number 2, 1966 Oldsmobile F-85 442. Coming right after the brute force of the Fairlane 500 Cobra Jet, the 1966 Oldsmobile F-85 442 keeps the momentum alive, but with its own unique flavor. At a glance, the F-85 wore the plain suit of a middle manager, but punched like a prize fighter. But under that polished exterior, Oldsmobile was cooking up something far more potent. The name 442 might sound like just another set of numbers, but it stood for 4-barrel carburetor, 4-speed transmission, and dual exhaust, a clear hint at the muscle quietly waiting beneath. The 66 version came equipped with a robust 400 cubic inch V8 engine, pushing a stout 350 horsepower and around 440 pound-feet of torque. Acceleration? This sleeper could surge from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just under 6 seconds, leaving plenty of so-called performance cars wondering what just happened. The F-85 442 wasn't about flashy gimmicks. It was about delivering serious performance in an understated package. Plus, the engine had a reputation for rock-solid reliability, which made it just as capable for long highway runs as it was for stoplight surprises. Yet for all its strengths, the F-85 wasn't without a few rough edges. While it had the muscle, its weight held it back a bit on twisty roads. The suspension was decent, but didn't fully match the powertrain's eagerness. And the styling, while clean, was almost too subtle for drivers craving visual aggression. Still, isn't there something satisfying about flying under the radar, especially in a car that could put bigger names to shame? Would you take subtle performance over flashy looks? Drop a comment and let me know. And just when you think the list couldn't get more surprising, wait until you see what's coming up next. Number 1 might just be the ultimate sleeper of the decade, one that hid in plain sight while rewriting the rules of street performance. Stick around, you won't want to miss this finale. Number 1, 1967 Plymouth Belvedere GTX 440. Finally, we've reached number 1 on our list. The 1967 Plymouth Belvedere GTX 440, the grand finale of sleepers. If you've been following along, you'll know we've seen some serious underdogs. But the Belvedere GTX 440, it takes quiet power to a whole new level. At first glance, the 1967 Belvedere GTX didn't look like much. It wasn't a flashy muscle car. It was so understated, it practically dared you to underestimate it. But beneath that simple exterior was a beast ready to pounce. Plymouth's GTX model, introduced in 1967, was essentially a luxury muscle car, giving drivers the best of both worlds, performance with comfort. Under the hood, the Belvedere GTX housed the 440 cubic inch V8 engine, generating 375 horsepower and a staggering 480 pound-feet of torque. This gave it the muscle to put up a serious fight against its competitors while maintaining an understated appearance. This powerhouse could launch from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just under 6 seconds. Impressive for the time, especially considering the GTX wasn't marketed as a high-performance car in the traditional sense. But the real magic was how it balanced raw power with practicality. The 440 V8 engine delivered immense low-end torque, making it a joy to drive on both city streets and highways. Coupled with a smooth-shifting automatic transmission, the GTX offered comfort for longer drives, with the ability to unleash all its power when necessary. What set the GTX apart was its suspension system. Unlike other muscle cars that had stiff suspensions designed purely for straight-line speed, the Belvedere GTX featured a more refined setup, which made for a more comfortable and controlled ride, all without sacrificing its ability to quickly accelerate. The rear axle ratios could be customized for performance or cruising, making it a versatile car for both performance enthusiasts and those looking for something practical yet powerful. While the GTX 440 wasn't as famous as some of its contemporaries, it held its own with impressive specs and an understated look, proving that sometimes the best things come when you least expect them. The GTX quietly owned the streets. No flashy exterior, just pure, untamed power. If you made it this far, you're officially one of the real ones. You've just seen 8 of the most underrated monsters ever built, and now you know why the Belvedere GTX earned its crown. But here's the kicker. The 70s had cars that were even sneakier. That list's coming soon. So hit subscribe, drop your favorite sleeper in the comments, and let's uncover the next hidden legend. Until then, stay fast, stay low-key,